What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering. I hope you're having a wonderful day. And it looks like things are heating up over at Riot Games. Now, I've covered everything going on with their disagreements with employees and certain policies that they have in place. But now we've got, this is probably the largest walkout at a gaming studio. And I do support this type of employee dissent. I mean, I support the Riot Walkout because I think this is how you handle things as a group. If you can get together and, it doesn't really necessarily matter if I support their cause or not. I do support the employees of a company having their voices heard in this manner. And I want to give you a brief. I actually have the Google Doc with the agenda. So I'm going to share with you what their goals are and why they're doing it. So it's from 2 to 4 today, so it's just starting now. Of course, there's a kickoff at 2:10, then they had messages from supporters, and they had guest speakers, and they had open mic, small group discussions, and then closing at 4. Here's some interesting stuff. Absolutely no video recording, either by press or other folks. I think this is good to protect people's anonymity. Photos are okay, but if someone asks you to not take their photo, please respect it. Messages of support and solidarity will be tweeted out on hashtag Riot Walkout. Feel free to use this tag on your social posts as well. Leadership spent the last week listening to us as individuals and entire company. We carried the emotional burden of sharing perspectives on how forcing employees into arbitration is wrong. Today, during Unplugged, Francis Frey also expressed his comfort with the policy that uses, quote, forced and other not good words in the same sentence. In her time at Uber, the company upheld doing the right thing by ending the controversy. If you remember correctly, basically Uber did have a policy in place where regardless, and the thing is, like, they're focusing on this one angle of it, but essentially if employees had a gripe with the employer, they had already signed something at hiring agreeing to arbitration. This is not uncommon, but it is what it is. At Unplugged, leadership made it clear that while open to changing policy moving forward, they are not committing to changing this policy for current employees. Nicolo summarized some of the arguments in favor of forced arbitration, namely that there is a trade-off in feeling secured against being publicly called to participate in lawsuits, as well as a chance for frivolous lawsuits. They went on to say, we do not believe the risk outweighs the benefits, and allowing victims to choose their course of justice, and our request remains the same. We are calling on Riot leaders to end forced arbitration in cases specifically of harassment and discrimination in the past, current and future contracts for all employees, including contractors. This includes withdrawing the motion for forced arbitration in active suits. We want to see a precise timeline for when those amendments will happen. We know some of you can empathize with Nicolo's logic or disagree with the reasons for the walkout. You can still come to the walkout. If you're on the fence, we'd love to hear you and talk through the issues. We are all employees and want to come together for what's best for us. We don't want to fracture the spaces we have either. Regarding active litigation, we stand with the plaintiffs currently affected by this policy, and we believe Riot can and should ensure that they have the right to choose to go to court. These folks have been brave enough to come forward and tell their stories and jeopardize their reputations and their careers. Their choice to enforce this policy, in their case, sparked this conversation. We hope employees will show up and lend the support. Withdrawing the motion for forced arbitration for these folks isn't just possible, it's the right thing to do. We have been promised a few times that things will get better moving forward. We need a firm commitment to when moving forward will happen. The D&I timeline, that's diversity and inclusion, presented today does some work on contextualizing that, but doesn't address the issue at hand. Current employees are actively being forced into arbitration, and while we have been given unclear answers to why, due to open litigation, leadership has committed to continue to deny them the right to choose. I don't know. This is not necessarily about whether or not I agree or disagree with these employees, but I will share my opinion because I'm not Poppy Harlow. I don't like their chances, but we'll see. in a space like game development, that seems to be very litigious, or there seems to be all sorts of these problems, made up or actual. I'm not sure a company is going to be willing to expose themselves to this level of, frivolity in terms of dealing with lawsuits nonstop. I also think, as being a part of a lawsuit right now, that agreeing to arbitration or at least mediation up front is a good thing for both parties. I think that there's this misconception, even one that I had before ever participating in a lawsuit, that, I'm just going to sue somebody. Well, it's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars. Do these employees even have that? Okay, could they crowdfund it? Maybe. But what is their likelihood of winning this lawsuit? Wouldn't arbitration or mediation seem like a better financial option once all the emotion is removed from it? I get giving people the right to choose, and so I support that, but I don't think that it's just necessarily always the best option. Now, there are guidelines. So there is a peaceful anti-policy walkout. Violence or destruction of property will not be tolerated. Aside from employees, there are other folks present. This may include members of press, volunteers who have offered to provide water and snacks. You're out there for 2 hours. Come on. If anyone makes you uncomfortable, whether employee or not, please let one of the organizers or a security person know. You've got security lined up. Wearing your swag. Remember, this is not anti-employment demonstration. We're coming together because we want Riot to be the best place we can be. No fun permitted. No discussion of confidential information, especially R&D projects. Interesting. So essentially, this all goes back to the Kotaku thing. Put simply, in fact, we want to be sure that this place that was pitched a safe, secure work environment, empowered to bring players the best games we can make. On Friday, April 26th, Kotaku released an article revealing Riot's lawyers filed a motion to force plaintiffs in a lawsuit into closed-door arbitration. See, my only critique here is, why are you separating only issues of harassment and stuff? You should just say, no, our employees. So you think that an employee that is unfairly treated in any other scenario doesn't have a right to a lawsuit? I mean, that does concern me that you're focused on that only. But, I don't work there, and it's that. What is forced arbitration? Why is it bad? I mean, okay, that's propaganda. On November 1st, 2018, 20,000 Google employees walked out after losing faith in their leadership. Within a week, the walkout results in a monumental policy change for Google, ending forced arbitration, but only, again, for these two particular cases. As of March 21st, Google ended all forced arbitration entirely. Now, that's the answer. End it all. But the thing is, I think we're aiming for about 15% of the company, so 500 people. So we'll have to see. It's interesting. I do give them credit for putting themselves out there, because if you're willing to walk out, then you should be willing to lose your job. I think if it's really that important to you, it's interesting, though, when you think about the other 85% of employees that either don't care or are too afraid to do it. I think not having forced arbitration would seem like a reasonable thing to have, but all existing employees already have signed that contract. There's already current litigation going on. So does Riot want to open themselves to all sorts of litigious employees, which they clearly have? I'm not saying those employees are wrong. I'm just saying, it's hard to say, well, you're not going to get sued and then have this problem. But there is precedent with Google and Uber, other progressive companies that have done this type of thing, and you're getting a lot of positive press from places like Vice. League of Legends Studios faces employee walkout, promises changes. Employees at Riot Games are considering a walkout. Well, no, they are. They're doing it right now as I'm recording this video. It's interesting. Update. Okay. There's a core group in Riot who've been planning and discussing the walkout. Though Waypoint has been unable to determine the exact size of the group, one employee told Waypoint they have support from a larger number of people who are not directly involved in planning. Last week, Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, decided in favor of the court's majority conservative wing, empowered the growing trend of forcing workers into arbitration. Of course, you have to mention that. It's perhaps not a surprise. Riot would prefer discussions in a small group sessions. Yeah, I mean, I don't think, forced arbitration is not necessarily about silencing employees. It's about protecting the company. And although those two things do intersect, it's hard to say that that's why those things, like, this is something a lawyer would tell the folks at Riot Games, like, you need to have this because one person could sue you for $100 million. You're going to be in court all the time. Even if you win every case, this will cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. You have LA-based Riot Games employees are preparing for a walkout this afternoon. I'm walking out as symbolic action to signal to leadership that I care about this issue, said one current employee. I hope leadership takes time to seriously listen to the issues. Since last year, 5 current and former Riot Games employees have filed lawsuits against the League of Legends publisher, alleging, among other things, the Equal Pay Act, which would be surprising. In late April, Riot filed a mention to block 2 of these lawsuits filed by current employees from being brought in front of a jury. Riot's lawyer contends that these employees signed arbitration agreements which waive their rights to jury trial. That's not a contend. It's a fact. I mean, they signed it. It's unfortunate, but you still willingly signed it. I think it would be a very good PR move for Riot Games to end this arbitration. Especially if they feel like they're going to win these lawsuits anyway. But it's interesting to see people, I have to give them credit because it's not just complaining about something on Twitter. It's actually getting off your butt and doing something. So good luck to to the Riot workers. I can't say I'm optimistic, but I do wish you the best of luck.